I know. Are we, all right. So let's call the meeting to order. We clearly have a quorum. Roger, would you please provide the meeting information?
Yes, thank you, Lisa. Good evening, everyone. If everyone would please silence your cell phones. The primary format for accessing this meeting is in person at City Hall. Virtual access cannot be guaranteed due to potential technology issues. When the chair calls for public comment, please approach the podium to indicate you wish to speak. Virtual participants should raise their hand, use the raised hand function. Once your name is called on, please unmute and turn on your camera to provide your comments. Please state your name and your zip code before providing comments. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The city reserves the rights to turn videos off or mute participants. And now back to Lisa.
All right. Does anybody have any comments regarding last month's meeting minutes? If not, does anybody have a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Vicki. I move that we approve the minutes.
Ruth, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And they are approved. All right, so we now go to public comment.
Right, and there was one that came in today that I posted and sent to everyone. They said it was for the loop, but it really was more in general for the kiosk
Right.
that were along the loop. So I don't, I put it there because it fit better than what they were going to talk about tonight with the loop. I know that we were looking more at the completion, and that's more of an add-on. So if we need to bring that up in another meeting, we can in the future. So, okay.
Do you want to read the public comment?
Oh, if you want me to, I can. We can go ahead and go, I can show it real quick. Basically, they were requesting historical signage for the Peterson Road link. They submitted a letter of support or they're asking, we are writing to support the loop funding and to consider historical signage along the Peterson Road link. And they actually have different information on John Doy Court, and Dr. John Doy, and gave him some information on him as well. And they actually have a little piece on here of what the kiosk information would look like if we want to go that route.
Thank you.
And there is a letter there too. And these are the folks that I think are part of Grover Barn as well, that part of that group. So they're looking at, more historical information to be provided to folks.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Do you read the public comment, general public comment or items?
That's it.
But do you read that agreement?
No,
Okay.
we kind of covered that with 3 minutes. so.
Right.
Okay, good.
Right. And so we'll go now to public
Public
comment.
comment in the
We
room.
will, anybody in the room first, and then online second.
Right.
If anybody has any public comment, welcome to come to the microphone. Seeing none, anybody online?
Is there anyone online that has public comment, general public comment? It appears no.
All right.
Okay.
So then we go to our regular agenda items, beginning with the presentation of proposed Parks, Rec, and Culture memberships and fees.
I think it's up there.
Okay, but I started.
Oh, okay. For this, I didn't get sent do you have the presentation up there? No, okay.
Okay, well,
I thought, do you want me just to put it on from the agenda, from the city commission agenda?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
okay.
what we're doing.
Okay, I wasn't aware, okay,
sorry, here.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you. We're still getting this stuff down. Eventually, we will get it. Okay.
Are you going to come here?
Okay, thank you. I'll reduce this. Okay, good evening, Advisory Board, Parks Recreation Advisory Board, and visitors. Tonight I'm here to present the 2026 budget plan for our department, Parks, Recreation, and Culture, with a specific focus on one key component, which is the introduction of recreation center membership and spectator fees. The proposal we're going to present is a product of months of internal planning, community engagement, and budget modeling. What I'm sharing tonight reflects a strategy that helps us meet our budget reductions target while preserving access, protecting service levels, and positioning the department for long-term sustainability. Here is the agenda for a quick review of what we'll be covering today, including context and background, why we're here, how we got here, expenditure reductions that would be a result if we didn't include any new membership fees. We do have some fees that we would be increasing as part of our revenue plan, but it falls short of these new fees that we're going to be proposing. And then we'll review what our approach is with membership fees and spectator fees. And then I'll turn it over to Lindsay, who will come up and once again, as she did last month, go over the structure of our fees and the programs that we've worked around them, and as well as discuss the fees. And then she'll talk about the market comparison, what the final result was now that we have some fees, as well as our 2026 targets and goals. We want to start with conservative numbers that we feel that we can meet, especially as we start to roll this out over the first year, as well as an implementation plan. And then finally, I'll show you, and I think you've all seen it, the questions that we're going to be posing to the commission tomorrow for some further direction in determining how we're going to move forward through this process until the September budget is finally approved. Now, I will say that this is the same presentation that the commission will see. So probably some of the things that we talked about won't be it won't be the first time you hear them. Certainly the fees are, but some of these ideas. So if we've covered something extensively, I'll try to just speed that up a little bit and give us some time to focus on fees and answer questions around those. That seem to be what the greatest needs are right now. I will also say that while we had some attachments of public comment to this agenda item, in addition to those that requested specifically to be forwarded to the advisory group. We also received some others to our general inbox of Parks and Recreation. I want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. I think we have 12 or 13 attached and about 30 that were not. All of those that were not attached have the same sentiment. They are not supporters of these fees. But I want to make you aware that we also did receive that as probably a result of the newspaper article and certainly some of these agendas. So, but the ones we attached are the ones that said specifically to the advisory board, which is what we instruct them to do in the agenda. All right, so moving forward, here's our background on why we're here. As you all are aware, and I think I try to mention this at every meeting since last year, that our department is facing a budgetary shortfall of $1.8 million. Citywide, it's over $6 million after we went through a balancing act, an exercise that involved the community, involved an employee committee, and involved as well as a community budget group. We came up with, or the city came up with some reductions to help us meet that $6.5 million reduction. $1.8 million of that was assigned to Parks and Recreation based on the outcomes of the balancing act. So that's about a 10% reduction in our operating budget. The balancing act, while, and I think it's been brought up at every commission meeting as well, where the budget's been discussed, the results for that were split into tiers. Not every department's reductions were the same or consistent from one service level to another. So they grouped budget office and city manager's office, grouped these into tiers so that they could kind of the average of all of those were given a value. Of those that were placed into 4 tiers, tier 1 being no reduction to the programs, we had 1 of those in our 10 programs, and that was youth and adult sports. and as opposed to 20%, which we had two programs, recreational health and wellness and Eagle Bend Golf Course. Those we're looking at a 20% reduction based on the Balancing Act. Now, what we've marked in here are revenue-generating programs within our portfolio of programs. And a few of those, including aquatics and Eagle Bend Golf Course, we're looking at potentially defraying some of those reductions because we're able to generate revenues through those activities. So even though they said reduce 20% of Eagle Bend Golf Course, we can easily recapture that amount of money in Eagle Bend Golf Course itself, the amount that they were stating to reduce it by. So we are looking at net numbers of a program. So if there's revenues, expenses less revenues, what does that look like, and what is the city funding? What portion of that operating cost is the city funding? That was the approach that the city manager accepted for us and other departments that are able to implement some fees to try to minimize some of the impact of the reductions. So in the next slide, when we go over here, we'll see what those reductions look like without membership fees. And I want to I want to state that we haven't, while we have some general numbers for this that gave us these reductions, we have not gone as deeply into these reductions as we have into the proposed fees. That took a lot of work, so some time work, so we were developing those. Although we have some high-level numbers of how these reductions are reached if we do not implement some fees. Now, this combination, as I mentioned earlier, of reductions and revenue enhancements only includes, if you look on the bottom of the presentation, those reductions that we are planning on implementing or able to implement easily within our current structure of program fees. It does not include any new fees, such as membership and spectator fees. So in this model, we're looking at approximately an enhancement of revenue of $370,000 with a reduction to our operating budget of $1.4 million, which comes up roughly to that $1.8 million reduction when put together. So in this scenario, we're looking at the elimination of 6 full-time and multiple part-time positions, as well as services and hours at all our recreation centers, fewer fitness classes, sports and recreational programs. The one thing that the Balancing Act doesn't necessarily take into account is how impacting parks and recreation, or parks, open trails, and parks, open spaces and trails, that there's maintenance for these fields that we do sports on. So there's overlap between programs, and affecting one will affect another. So there's some of those implications by reducing some programs that affect others. But nonetheless, we're looking at service level reductions in about 39 of our 71 parks. We did some reductions this year based on some budget reductions that we did last year, and I believe there's about 9 of them that were affected this year with less mowing. I think you all have probably heard about that. So this would be a greater impact. Again, we're talking about seasonal employees, part-time employees who we hire in the summer specifically to do mowing or contracted mowing or tree removal, or that type of thing that we would have to necessarily reduce staffing on. And then, of course, potential removal of park amenities. Now, what we're not stating here, and maybe this is not as clear, is that we're not talking about going in and proactively removing park shelters and playgrounds or anything. Is as they reach their life cycle, the end of their life cycle, we may not be as readily able to replace them. So, and we do inspect them for safety several times a year. So, safety is of utmost concern. So once they get beyond the point where it's safe and we don't have the necessary funds to replace them, that would be when we may remove them and not replace them. So again, not proactively doing it, just the inability to replace as those happen. And then one of the other things is rehome again, if we don't do these fees, one of the cuts was to education, to environmental education, which is Prairie Park Nature Center primarily. And one of the ways they can reduce is through rehoming the birds of prey, which is an expense that can be eliminated. Now, it would change some of the programming that we do over there as well. But everything else, it's not, we're not going to close it. I know that was proposed earlier, but there are some reductions that were identified in there. All right. So then the next alternative, which is what we included in the proposed, what the city manager included in the proposed budget that was presented last Tuesday to the commission, we're turning this around and saying with these new membership fees, which are listed on the bottom, yes.
Louis, excuse me for interrupting, but I want to know where the city commission is in terms of the overall target reduction. Has the city commission seen, I mean, I'm sure they've seen the budget, but have they actually said, okay, this overall budget is okay?
No, sir. They received the proposed budget last Tuesday, and that is now, they had some questions. So the next meeting tomorrow, they will be asked what the maximum mill levy increase might be, because they have to report that to the state. So it could be a maximum, and then they can choose lower than that as we go through the budget process. So the next
Okay.
from tomorrow through really September 12th, when the budget goes for approval, they can make any modifications until then.
So tomorrow night will be the first time that they will see that there's been that the proposed budget requires this total amount of money reduced from Parks and Rec.
I can't state what they've seen, but they would have seen this along, well, they know what the reduction has been. So that's been proposed, or that's been presented to them throughout the budget process every time that the budget office has come and presented.
Okay.
This is the first time they're seeing
How you would.
how we're planning on, yeah, just like you are. Now they're seeing the details of how we hope to balance the budget.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so now if we are able to implement these fees, we're adding those to the already increased plans for golf program, rental fees for programs and our rental fees and programs and our aquatics admission, and this is an increase of $1 from $6 to $7 for the aquatics. But this will reduce the amount of cuts that we need to make from that $1.4 million to $690,000. And this means less elimination of part-time and full-time positions, which allows us to continue to do some of those duties that we would be eliminating if we didn't have this revenue. And then some reductions in park trail and maintenance. Again, $690,000 will be somewhat noticeable, but it does reduce the impact. It would not be the 71 parks. They would be, targeted areas that were either underused or whatever those are, and we'll make some really strategic decisions around that. And then slight reductions in hours of services at our recreation centers. So this is roughly 1/2 of the amount of dollars in expenses that we're reducing, but they're felt in different ways because of where those are coming from. Again, going back to the Balancing Act, the largest cut was to park trails and open spaces. So this allows us to continue to do some of those, uphold some of those duties that we've been doing by allowing us to spread some of the revenue across all our functions. So this is our hope, 1.12 out of all the fees, $690,000. And not our hope, but that it was in the proposed budget that went to the commission that they will be considering over the next few months, really, next few weeks. All right, so just for a brief comparison of what we're talking about here monetarily, currently in 2025, we have budgeted revenues across all our programs of $5.2 million. If we were to not add these revenues, new revenues next year, we're looking at an approximate 7% increase of the new revenues that we're proposing, which are golf course, the pool, and program and facility rental fees. If we were to implement them, we're looking at potentially a 20% revenue increase over the budget of 2025. And in some of these cases, I think we're pretty close already to 2025 goals. So these are somewhat certainly realistic, even though these are budgeted revenues for '25. The year hasn't ended, so we don't know what the actual, but we're tracking well in this scheme. So then the 2026 would be approximately a 20% increase. And then for cost recovery purposes, we're looking at our budget, our expenditures versus our revenue, and that's roughly 28% this year. Increase, or adding these fees next year would increase our cost recovery from 28% to 34%, or approximately 21% in our cost recovery rate for our programs. Now, that is a little skewed because not everything that we will be covering through these service fees is a return on investment. It's not a revenue generator, right? We will use some of this money to mow parks and to do things that don't necessarily come attached to a dollar generator. So, but generally speaking, it's that is the number formulaic that comes out. So this is, again, just to shed some light on what we're talking about monetarily. All right, so I think I'm going to turn it over to you.
You can do one more and then hand it.
Okay, I'm sorry, preparing, okay, so again, the purpose of these fees is not for the city to make a profit. It's in order for us to reduce the impact of these necessary budget reductions if the assumptions that the budget has been proposed, the proposed budget has, which is no mill levy increase. The other two things, I believe, is investment in capital projects, as well as paying market rate for employees. So those are the three things that the commission said to prioritize, as well as looking at fees in order for us to reduce some of those impacts. So by doing this, we are preventing deeper cuts, as I outlined earlier, of trying to maintain acceptable levels of service in our parks and forestry and trail operations, preserving core program, retaining staff and keeping facilities open, and trying to be consistent with what our master plan states about sustainability, financial sustainability for the department. While the findings didn't quite say, that we should be doing certain things, it did provide examples of what we should be doing in order to make it more sustainable, and charging appropriate fees and trying to reach certain cost recovery thresholds were in that recommendation, in those recommendations, I'm sorry. So with that, I will turn it.
Oh, one more. Go ahead.
Okay, all right,
It's
so.
ready.
All right, sorry about that. This is actually a dry run for tomorrow, so this is helpful for us.
I think you've got a few
One less
more,
day
so
to
don't let
prepare
me
for this.
throw you off.
So as I mentioned earlier, that we've done public engagement around this, including, we'll see some results on the next couple of slides, but we've had a web page up with information, including a link to a survey, which we gathered 2,632 responses to. Now, that was open for just about 3 weeks, and we received not just the responses, but also the results of raw data, other ideas, other questions, and those were all uploaded onto the project webpage as well. So if somebody wants to see what the commentary are, both negative and positive for these fees, that's available as well. We held 4 pop-up events, one at each recreation center, and that was attended by 52 individuals, either in groups or one by one. I think we had one that had over 20 or 30 people at, and that was a very engaged group with very good questions. And then we did, our community communications office did 3 focus groups, one with our budget committee, or 2 with our budget committees combined, and then 2 with the community members. And that feedback was gathered and passed on to us. And this is kind of a short recap of what some of the results were. I know this is hard to see, it is in your packets. But what we were trying to capture with this data at this point when this was put out, it didn't have pricing yet. We were trying to gather sentiment as to, not sentiment, but usage, who is using it, how frequently are you using it, and what are you using our centers for? And then followed up with some questions about how do you feel about facility fee, or fees to enter our facilities? And if, we wanted a full picture. I will say this was a self-selected survey. It wasn't randomized. It's not necessarily statistically, what was it called? Valid, because it wasn't done. So these are respondents that typically have an interest in stating something. And of those 2,600 or so, we did mail out to our rec track, our program, and registration email list of about 27,000 or so email addresses. So this would include some of those, and we would expect that. It's not a surprise, when we go to the next slide and we see that a big majority, not a big majority, a majority of 61% are against these fees. So it wasn't surprising to us, but we did want to ask the question, well, why did you ask that? You know how they feel. I wanted to make sure that we were able to capture that sentiment. I did not want to gloss it over. I think it's telling of what the community sentiment is. And then following that up with, if we did those fees, what would your major concerns be? We used that feedback as well as the feedback from the focus groups, and emails that we've been receiving, and the community and employee budget teams to come up with some of the proposals in the pricing that we're going to talk about. And we mentioned that last time as well, as far as access for youth and scholarships, that was already being developed based on the feedback we had already received. I think and then, of course, as I mentioned, the survey results have the sentiment of open comments stating, what some of the feelings are out there as far as why fees should not be included. I think what is important here is that when asked to rank the overall value of recreation centers to the community and public benefit, out of 10, the response was 9.21. So, I think this reiterates, the community's need and desire to have accessible programs and facilities. And in a way, this underscores some of the need for us to be able to raise some revenues that will allow us to continue to offer those services to the community. All right, so now I will turn it over to Lindsay. Can you control the mouse?
I don't know that I can. Nope, I'm going to let you drive it.
Okay, I'll do it.
All right. Good evening. I'm Lindsay Hart, Assistant Director for Recreation. Some of this we're going to review that we went over last month, but just kind of a quick recap, and also just to kind of confirm that, after, as Luis just mentioned, we did review the survey results and listening to the top concerns and questions that our community has. As we were creating this membership fee structure and the pricing, we wanted to make sure we offered a lot of flexible options. That's what we've heard from day one, and has been, our point of concern from the beginning is just making sure we can accommodate everybody in different ways. So as we started to put together this fee structure, from the beginning we started with flexible options. So we're going to be offering day passes and punch cards. That's for those who are going to use it occasionally. Maybe they have family in from out of town. They're not our regular users, and so we wanted to accommodate options for those members of our community. Then the next step would be those who are going to be regular users, and some might be monthly pass holders, some might want an annual membership. A lot of that depends on what your use is going to be in the facilities, and again, you may only use it for a few months out of the year, different seasons, for different reasons, or if you're going to be coming on a regular basis, then an annual membership would be for you. And then as far as pricing options, as you've seen, now that the fees have been posted, we have two different options which offer, the first one, option one, is all facilities, which includes Sports Pavilion Lawrence, Holcomb Rec Center, and East Lawrence Rec Center. And then we also recognize that some may just want to use our neighborhood rec centers, and some may not go to SPL. And so we do have a lower price point for option 2, which you could get a membership for just the 2 neighborhood rec centers, East Lawrence Center and Holcomb Rec Center. Then as far as the pricing structure, we tiered it by age and household type. So we have adult rates, and then we have a youth senior rate, and then we have a household, which is a family membership. The household membership covers up to 5 people. And then, another top concern that we've talked about from the very beginning is just offering affordable scholarships, which we currently have for all of our recreation programming. So we created what we're calling a qualified rate, which is basically a scholarship rate. And I'm going to explain that here in a little more detail in just a minute. And then we're also recommending resident and non-resident pricing. And so as far as, affordability, access, those are things we heard all throughout this. The first one being access for youth. That was a big concern. A lot of things that we heard was, right now, after school is a big time, where we have the youth attend our facilities. And so we did want to address that concern. And so we are offering free after-school entry for youth, which will be ages 5 through 17. On the after-school days. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday would be from 3 to 5 p.m. And then Wednesday is an early release day, so we would offer it from 1 to 5 p.m. And this would include locations at all 4 of our recreation centers, including the community building. And then, as I mentioned, we're also offering a reduced rate. We're calling it a qualified rate. And this is for residents demonstrating financial hardship. And so we are offering a rate that's 60% off the standard resident rate. We're going to make sure it's a simple, low barrier application process. It will use the same criteria that we currently use for our scholarship program, which is based on programs such as CanCare, school lunch, housing, SNAP, and we're going to be working. We're going to work on it with a subcommittee with some staff and possibly some board members to look into other criteria that we can include. As it is, we know that things are changing, and federal programs might be changing, and so we want to make sure we are inclusive as possible. And, we will consider any document, any, information that you can provide us to show that you are qualified. And so we will continue to work through that process and make it as, as low barrier as possible. And so we're still working on that, but as of now, the way it's set up is that we'll use our current scholarship program, but again, we're going to be looking into the criteria. Okay, so I think you've all seen the fees now that it's been posted. And so as I mentioned, we have membership options 1 and 2. So on this first screen here, it's showing the membership option number 1. And it says all recreation facilities, which includes Sports Pavilion Lawrence, Holcomb, and East Lawrence. It does not include the community building. As part of our budget process, we decided not to include this because currently the community building is not logistically set up to support a membership model. So we have a lot of logistical concerns, and so we on purpose decided not to include the community building in this membership model. So again, membership option 1 would be for SPL, Holcomb, and ELC only. And as you can see, as you go through here, this particular slide shows a breakdown of what it would cost per day if you chose that particular membership. So for a monthly membership, we calculated it based on 30 days, so you can see the various breakdown, as well as in an annual membership, we just base it on 365 days, just to give you an idea of what it might cost. And then another thing to note, when you look at the household annual, for a resident, it's $400, which is $1.09 a day. Well, then that's also split among up to 5 people. And so then you'll see that we offer the resident rate, and then the qualified resident rate is in the middle, and that is a 60% discount. And then we are also offering or proposing a non-resident rate. And then at the bottom, you can see the definitions of, adults ages 18 through 59, senior will be 60 plus, and youth will be ages 5 through 17. And then one other thing, and you can go ahead to the next slide, Luis, is fine. We did get some questions in over the weekend that I want to clarify, and we have put out some updated FAQs on our website. A lot of questions have been coming in about entering the building if you have a fitness class, or if your child is in a basketball league, or you've rented the gym, or for a birthday party, you know. So in those instances, you do not have to pay to enter the facility. So if you've paid for a program or a class, then you come in, we're working with staff, there's gonna be a lot of training, you will check in at the front desk and you will say, I'm here for this fitness class, and then they will let you in. Also, in particular for fitness classes, if you've entered, you've taken your class, we are completely fine if you want to walk the track afterwards or use the equipment. So there are certain things that, you know, we're going to allow once you've paid and entered the building for a specific purpose, you know, that will be fine on that particular day of your class. If you are entering for a program that your child has paid for or signed up, or a family member, and you're watching their basketball league or practice, you can enter the facility without paying. In that instance, if you wanted to work out or exercise, use the facility, we would ask you to pay for a day pass or have a membership. In addition, this would also cover a gym rental. We have outside groups rent our facility, the turf, and have practices and camps and clinics that would also apply. As long as you check in at the front desk, let them know what you're here for, then you would be able to come in and pick up your child or watch their practice. And so, as we have also talked about, the one thing we will be charging separately for will be tournament spectator fees. So if we are having a tournament, volleyball, basketball, some of these large tournaments that we have, we are proposing that we will be charging a $5 spectator fee. If you come and pay your fee and check in and you're there all day for a volleyball tournament, if you want to use the facility and work out while you're there, we will ask you to pay the day pass, the daily fee, or, you know, or if you have a membership, then that's fine. You're already in, you can show your access card for that. So that is one thing, and it's shown here in the bottom left corner, the day pass. So you can see our daily rates in this sense will be for SPL, the daily pass fee will be $5 for resident, $8 for non-resident, and then you see the $5 tournament spectator fee, and then for Holcomb or East Lawrence, it's $3 for resident, $5 for non-resident. And I'll jump back up, I skipped past. So the membership option number 2, again, is a lower rate just for the neighborhood rec centers. So that'll be for Holcomb and East Lawrence. And again, you can see the rates are broken down in the same structure with residents, qualified residents, and non-residents. And I mean, in this case, it shows, you know, a senior youth pass for a qualified resident. An annual pass is broken down to 8 cents a day. You know, so we've offered a lot of different pricing, a lot of different options. And then the last thing would be the 20 visit punch card, which we also have, the resident qualified and non-resident fee. And for a punch card, it can be bought by anybody and given to anybody. You can give it to a family member. If you have family come in town, they can use it. If a family wants to purchase it, and, you know, a family of 5 could buy a 20 punch card, and they can all 5 use it each time they come. You know, so it gives you a lot of flexibility with the punch cards. Okay, I think that's, and then this market comparison we've had on our website. We updated some information after our previous board meeting. We added some median income comparisons, and then we've added the Lawrence rates on the graph here, which was not on there previously, but just so you can see how we compare to some neighboring cities in this area in Kansas, and then some other cities across the country.
And we want to make sure that it's clear, this did come up, that it is very difficult to compare our cities around because every city has a different facility. What the contents are, some have pools, some don't, some only have 1 center, we have 3 accessible centers. So this is more based on what their program or their membership fees look like, and where we kind of fall within that. If you'll notice, some of the ones that have the higher prices also include pool. If you were to add that to our pool passes, we'd still be under that. But so just to give kind of a scale, and we can explain through this, but capturing like for like is virtually impossible comparing cities. And I will say it's not on here. Baldwin City just opened a rec center. It's one court. They are the only ones free in the area.
Okay, so as far as year one goals and targets, we looked at a lot of national data, specifically through NRPA, which is the National Parks and Rec Association, and used some target numbers to help us set some goals. As you all know, this is an estimate. You know, we're not sure what to expect or what the turnout might be, so we were very conservative when, you know, planning and putting together some membership goals. But for year one, we're hoping for 2,000 annual or monthly memberships, and then 500 punch cards and/or day passes. And typical membership rate would be about 3 to 5% of the population. And so again, we, you know, started very conservative, and our target is less than 2%. But again, we feel like this is an achievable goal, and there really should be minimal implementation cost for this.
Okay.
And then as far as what the implementation plan looks like, obviously, we're going to continue to receive feedback. This is, you know, still a work in progress. We're still working with staff on a lot of logistics, a lot of, you know, additional things that, you know, we haven't even included in here. But as questions come up and we consider, you know, how we're going to be doing programming and things like that. So we're working with staff. There's going to be a lot of training, you know, a lot to do in the next few months. But, you know, once we hit the fall in September, once we receive direction from the commission, if the budget's approved and this plan is approved, then for September through December, we will be doing, you know, preparing our registration system, doing marketing, doing a, you know, all the awareness campaigns, and then a membership drive. You know, we'll want to try to get people signed up before January so we can have everything in place and, you know, avoid long lines and things like that come January 2nd. And so this fall, we'll be working with policies internally, training staff, working on a lot of customer service expectations, because things will be changing, and, you know, enforcing new rules and scanning and things like that. And then just, you know, by December, we'll be finalizing all of our logistics and just making sure we have all of our facilities and materials ready to launch. And then the public rollout would officially begin on January 2nd with membership fees.
Okay. All right, thank you. So the agenda tomorrow will end with some key questions back to the commission. The first one being around membership and spectator fees, and asking them, should we continue to consider these moving forward through the process, or should we start exploring into the deeper reductions? And then, are the proposed fees fair, transparent, and are they aligned with community values? And then we're also going to ask them about resident versus non-resident fees. Residents being, in this proposal, would be Lawrence addresses specifically. We do share zip codes with non-Lawrence addresses, so we would implement our GIS system into our rec track system to determine whether it's resident or non-resident. And then, does access and affordability, do free youth access address the concerns adequately, and do the proposed income and age-based rates address the concerns adequately? And then, if there are any other considerations that we should address moving forward. With these, we're asking for direction, as I mentioned, for us to develop further our budgets between now and September. Implementing the spectator fees would be refining them further and moving into the implementation plan. Otherwise, looking at how we exactly how we deliver on those reductions in 2026 and future years. So with that, we will be ending our presentation to commission once we get the feedback, and as well as with you. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah.
It's discussion now, right?
So yes, discussion.
Okay.
Any
Do we
Any-
discuss and then have public
Yep,
comment, or
I
what?
think that's the order, right?
Right, yes, the board now discusses it, and then you will open up public comment and bring it back to the board after that.
Thank you. I guess I'm going to start out by saying that, this is Lisa Hallberg, I am the chair, that doesn't mean anything. But having read through a lot of the public comment we've received that was included in the packet, it is very hard to it's very hard to be positive towards these fees, particularly how they would impact the most vulnerable members of our community, that it is very difficult to consider how these could be in a tiered pricing structure that could ever be truly equitable. And as a community, it seems the resounding concern is that this will make things worse, having fees, in terms of the people who need these facilities the most. I know I have in the past thought, oh, yes, this sounds like a great way to recoup costs. But when you consider historically that these facilities have never been, and there was a promise, the taxes that were paid through property taxes, whatever tax structure was implemented in the past, included a promise that building these facilities, they would remain free for Lawrence residents. So those two things in common make it very hard to consider these fees as being a reasonable solution to this budgetary problem. And that's my opinion.
Well, this is John Nalbandian. The way we're looking at this is that the budget reduction amount is taken as a given. So we're working, it's not like we can go back to the city commission and say, don't raise fees, whatever this is. I mean, this apparently has gone through some process in the city where we are given this number. It doesn't seem reasonable to me to think that the city commission would not be aware of all the issues that we are going to bring to them. The slide that stood out for me here was not that the big number of people that were opposed to the fees, but the reason why they were opposed to the fees. And the reason is exactly what Lisa has said. So that the equity concern seems to be the most important concern here, which then raises another sort of my mind going on here and saying, well, maybe as part of this or subsequent to it, we need to talk about a community fundraising scholarship program. And to that end, I will tell you that I have recently, in the last month, have made a $25,000 contribution to a scholarship fund. So hopefully that could be kind of a starting place for this. But what the biggest thing here is that the budget reduction is a given.
But doesn't the commission, sorry, this is Marilyn Hull, the commission could rearrange things. This number's been given, but it's not a final number. The mill levy could go up. There could be some rearrangement. And so I know what you're saying, but I think we need to clarify that this isn't the absolutely final number.
No, I think, if I may, you're correct. At this point, it's a given until, and then the next step tomorrow is, okay, what is your tolerance? How high does that go for a mill levy increase, right? And then they can make the decision, just like happened last year. So we can get a close indication tomorrow, they may say absolutely no mill levy increase, neutral, no, and then we'll know the answer, right? That kind of helps us take the next step, or they can have a max. Now, the reality is that if that happens, I don't know that would all come to Parks and Recreation, right? We have firefighters that they're building a station, they can't staff that in Station 6. So there are other priorities as well that they may choose to cover, those reductions from that. I'm not saying that I know what they're thinking, but that is in the realm of possibility that, yes, we want to do it, but it wouldn't necessarily go. So they're still reprioritizing, and if that's the case, we would go back and, and see how it changes. So we will remain open through this entire process. We have to, right? So, but each step of the way will give us a little bit more information. But as of, last Wednesday's proposed budget, until given other indications, yes, it is a given, but not final.
I think sorry, this is Vicki. I have some concerns about the proposed qualified rate. I shared a few of those via email, largely that they are connected to shifting ground federally. Also, they tend to be wildly underused, right? So those programs themselves, and then I'd be interested in your data about the extent to which people are already using scholarships, because this is largely predicated on the fact that people will continue to use and expand their utilization. So I think that's an important feature to bring to the discussion. I also just really have concerns that this will beget a cycle that leads to closure of some of the community centers. I think if I lived closer to Holcomb or East Lawrence Rec Center, I might have questions about the value of the memberships given those centers. We also know that some of the communities that are concentrated around there have the lowest income of our entire city. So it doesn't seem implausible to me that we would see low membership uptake in those neighborhoods that begets a conversation that those community centers are underutilized, leading to discussion about closure. So it would be nice to hear about those factors and what are the course corrections, so that if we see diminishing utilization, do we have a sense of what utilization looks like now? Would we know if that was impacting utilization, and would we put in safeguards and course correct so that we don't see those community centers close? Do you have?
Yeah, I can answer some of those. The scholarship utilization rate right now is very low. We know it's probably under 1% of our program enrollment. Now, programs are a bit different, than admission or entry fees, but let me think of what the order of questions that you asked. That's okay. Okay, so I'll answer this. The city manager asked us, I think at the beginning of the year, to come up with some priority key performance indicators out of our strategic plan outcomes. One of them for unmistakable identity in the area of equity and inclusion is number of scholarships, percentage of scholarships that are met, how much of the need is met, as well as number of scholarships. I have prioritized that KPI. Those are 2 out of the 3 KPIs that I've prioritized this coming year. One was utilization, and to figure what that number is and track the effectiveness or the either uptick or downtick, and continue to monitor that so that we can continue to adjust. And the other 2 are around the scholarship. So that we can also refine that. How is this impacting? How do we create a program that's more accessible, that is communicated better, that is very low barriers, so that we're not creating this. And I'm not saying that, you know, you don't need to develop this, and your email about how we qualify, we are open to flexibility within that. You know, we've had some questions about, well, why don't you do a sliding scale? That would make it more difficult. We would then need proof of income to say, okay, you're going to qualify. Where we're trying to make it as low barrier. If you have applied for, or if there's a system that, you know, we can rely on that gives us that information readily and easily, you know, you're already qualified in a program, okay, you don't need to prove that to us again, you know, so we're open for those conversations, but definitely scholarships, the use of scholarships, the effectiveness, how we provide those to the community as a service and is on the radar and a high priority for the city out of, you know, the probably dozen or so KPIs that we've targeted for next year, really, because that's when this is implemented. So it's something that we will continue to watch to make sure that we're moving the needle in the positive direction in both of those things and try to capture flaws within our program or our assumptions or communication plan to try to maximize that program. So we remain sensitive. We are not stuck in what we're doing now in any way. And as Lindsay mentioned, we hope to get a group of people together that can help us figure out how to best implement this, including our Office of Equity and Inclusion. Faris Mohammed, who is the director there, he's been engaged in this. We're co-champions on this key KPI of scholarships. So there's work to do there, and we will continue to do it through the remainder of the year and continue to adjust as necessary as we start getting, you know, feedback and data around usage and utilization and available funding. So one of the things that we did do was, you know, our original intention was, hey, we're going to tap into our scholarship programs and only use that. But that's a finite amount of money, right? And with that, we have to go and continue to raise money for scholarships. And this, I think now in this way, scholarships can be an augmentation to the discounted rates or the preferred rates without a max, right? Because you can only, if you're doing scholarships, you can only use as much money as you have in the community foundation, right? So this gives us you know, an amount that is really not capped in any way, and it's solely based on need. And then our projections that we did are based on a certain number. I think we're estimating 15% scholarship usage. Right now, as I mentioned, it's under 1%, right? So is it 15%?
10% is our estimate.
Okay, 10% is our estimate right now. It's at 1%. But we're just in our revenue generation model right now, because it does reduce our revenues if we're charging less and not supplementing that with scholarships. So it's already factored in, but we're willing, you know, to continue to refine that process.
I have a follow-up question then to consider maybe a broader set of ideas. Sort of different than the idea of a scholarship and a scholarship fund. You know, a lot of this implementation is quite complex. This various structures, whether you're going to buy this or that, and then once you throw in, you know, need-based assessment, it gets even more complicated. Have you considered, or has there been any discussion of a model more like the way museums handle it? Anybody can walk in, it's a public, I mean, and not every museum is like this, but I'm thinking of the Nelson, that you can voluntarily pay a fee or contribute a voluntary subscription, a voluntary membership, but nothing is required. And then the onus then is on promoting that to those who want to, but not having to police who you are, what your relationship to the building is, or anything about your economics. It's not, obviously, it is not as secure a process. You can't project it right now in any way. But if we were to not have fees, but implement and take the reduction,
Right. That's the
But
key.
then implement a voluntary system, gather some data from that, and maybe recover with a different model.
We have not considered that. That wasn't what we were asked to do. Not that
I
we
know.
wouldn't, if that's what, the next step is, I think.
Yeah.
I think if the direction is, don't consider them, we can have that conversation. I think if there's a willingness for the community to do that in order to bring back some of the service. But again, it is key, then we can't plan for that. I mean, we can plan for something, right? We can say there's something that's gonna come in, we still have these other revenues that we're intending to bring in next year. But it would be a harder plan, to implement in '26, and it might be a future year. So we haven't considered it, but
Of course not. But I guess I feel like that this is the moment where we're going to start talking about ideas. And I want, I'm hoping that we continue to have those conversations.
yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank the staff for all the time that you put into this. It's obvious that you have spent a lot of time working on this, and I know it's been difficult for you too. So just want to make sure I credit you with trying to make the best out of a situation that was handed to you. Also, John, that's an amazing philanthropic gesture, and I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Having said all that, I don't think I would be representing the citizens of Lawrence, and that's what I think I'm supposed to be doing if I supported these fees. The opposition was actually 80%. There were 60 or so percent that were strongly opposed, and another 20% that were somewhat opposed. So for us to have done a survey and had 80% of citizens telling us, don't proceed with this, and then we're proceeding with it anyway, it's difficult. So officially, I have to say I don't support this. What I find most objectionable is any fee collection for children 17 and under. Children 17 and under should be free, always, full stop. I'm not going to balance the city's budget, in some way that discourages kids from being active, because in every other area of the community, we're trying so hard to make sure kids are active. The part of this analysis and work that I think is missing is what the local market will bear. I didn't see anything about, how much would you be willing to pay, or any estimates on that. And I frankly think that, though I don't like the idea of fees, what you're proposing here is double what it should be. It should be half. It should be half of what's here. And part of that is based on market competition. There are two gyms I know of in town, Planet Fitness and Crunch, that have an annual adult membership of $120 a year. So we're positioning ourselves as a public good that's charging more than double what some businesses in town are charging. To me, the optics of that are bad, and I think practical, frugal people are going to say, I'm going to one of those, if those facilities offer what they need, if they need weights and treadmills and stuff like that. The other thing is, I think that non-residents should pay more than 20% above the resident fee. As far as I know, Douglas County is not contributing to the city budget. So why are we being so generous with them? I mean, if you have to do fees, I would say 50% more as a minimum. they're not being taxed, and so I think that'd be very fair. That's it.
Ms. Taylor Bussinger, I also want to acknowledge, like, this is a really difficult situation, so appreciate the difficult discussions that we're having. My feelings about this are in no way, hopefully, it's not personal to Parks and Rec. I know the staff has worked really hard on this. I also recognize that we have to figure out a way to curb the issue. But I want to echo what Marilyn said, that, I feel as though my position, we have to be in tune with what the public says. And if it's 61% that strongly disagree and 20% that somewhat disagree, that's 80% that disagree. I can't ignore the equity issues across the board and access issues that have been raised. I also agree with what you said about, Marilyn, what you said about the numbers. I just don't think they add up. At Planet Fitness, $10 a month. Crunch Fitness, without a membership fee, $17.48 a month. $11 with the monthly contract. A private gym owned by a local person here in town, $25 a month if you're working with a trainer. My question then becomes, do our facilities and equipment, I know we do the best we can, but do our facilities and equipment justify the number that we've given when you can walk into a facility where there's more access to machines? And when we look at the numbers, the highest number was using the track, but the second highest number was using the equipment. And so I do wonder that if we did move forward with the fees, if we'd be entering into competition and how many people would not even use this and instead jump ship to one of the private gyms. I do worry about that. I also just can't ignore, on a personal note, what Parks and Recreation has meant to me as a kid growing up. Going into Holcomb and, almost daily after school and being mentored by the people there as they chased me around as I ran off my rambunctious energy. And then still seeing those same people work for Parks and Rec. And then, in college, walking to the community building and meeting the folks that are there and still running into those folks and aldermen that mentored me while I was there. And I can't bring myself to be okay with denying that same opportunity to others, because it's been part of the fiber of who I am. And so I recognize, again, this is a really difficult thing, and I, again, think we need to find some solution. I don't know if this is it for me.
I want to add one last thing, and that is in addition to acknowledging the work that the staff and you all have done for putting these numbers together, that it is not a wasted effort to have done that, that we feel informed about what is being proposed so that we can look at it critically and understand that this is really important to the process, so that even if, no matter what happens, it was a good thing that this process happened. So again, thank you all for all the work that's been done on this.
This is Ruth DeWitt. I just had a couple of questions. The spectator fees in tournaments, don't spectators already pay a fee when they go in? So would they be paying a fee to the tournament and a fee to the
Not every
watching?
tournament organizer does it in the same way.
Oh,
So we are in
okay.
conversations with them to let them know that if these fees are passed, including spectator fees, we would have to put it into their contract. Some do. Some may choose to raise it by $5. Some may, so we're in conversations about that. Again, we can't get too far ahead of it before we even had the fees in place, but we did have kind of a pre-survey of if we did this, what would it mean? And we had mixed reaction. But the next step is, we are doing this, now what, how do we make this happen? So, but not all of them do. Some do, some do not. So how we deliver that, and I will say that there are a lot of details, should this move forward, that we need to figure out, as quickly as possible between now and January 2nd, and way before that, so we can start to implement this. So there's a kind of research that we're going to be doing, and policy creation and process creation. But right now, it's all been targeted around dollar amounts, and not the execution. We've thought of these things as, how do we do this? But the details are yet to come, including that one.
Okay, I was worried that I'd pay over here and then go and pay over here again, so,
We're trying to avoid that double
okay.
payment of you're paying here. So trying to figure out if it's an invoicing process, or if it's, you reduce it by $5. So we're having those discussions. We just haven't gotten together with the organizers, and it's on our plan, short-term plan to do.
Okay, and another question I had is, when we were listening to the comprehensive plan, one idea was about sponsorship, and can you update, is there any talk about that anymore?
Yeah, that takes a professional, full-time person or a consultant to pursue these things. We do not have that on staff right now.
Right.
We don't have a professional that is dedicated to sponsorship, naming rights, revenue creation through concession contracts, through all that. That is where I want to go.
Okay.
Right now, that would take some time to develop. So saying this will substitute this in 2026 is not realistic. We can't raise $750,000 in sports, in sponsorships and all that in short term. But the idea is that this doesn't end just with this. We need to turn this department around to be able to recover as much as possible through, business-like thinking, including sponsorships throughout our entire system, whether it's in parks and ball fields, at SPL or whatever. But the hope is to get, and it's in our comprehensive plan to start a business development, or hire a business development person or a division that is specifically that. So that is a direction I definitely want to go in. It's just not available with the staffing. We not have a new position we can bring in to do this. And in some cases, the conversation is, well, they'll earn their own money. Well, that has to be proven, right? So you'd have to commit to paying somebody whatever to come in and try to raise that money. So that is absolutely in the plans for discovering how we can make that happen. But in the short term, we can't jump to that. We just simply don't have the capacity.
Yeah. I want to just echo Taylor in how difficult a position this is, and I think for everybody involved, for the staff of Parks and Rec, for you, for this committee, for the commission, I'm sure. And I think in some ways, with these, if these reductions are given, I think in some ways we've lost the question. It's not fees or no fees. It's what level of service do we expect as citizens from our department, and what finance do we have, and how do we fill that gap? Because this gap is very real. And when I hear stories about how valuable these centers are to young children and to families, and some of the public comment we got was so moving, and sometimes I hear that as though these can't close on our watch. We have to do something to ensure that these valuable centers to our community are valued in a way that we contribute to them and keep them sustainable, and keep our parks and keep our trails and and our golf course open. And so sometimes, leadership involves a series of really tough decisions. And so I just want to name that, and also thank you for your leadership, and Lindsay and the whole staff of the Parks and Rec Department, because this presentation is just, regardless of how you feel about the the fee issue, this presentation and the work that went into this is really impressive and very helpful for having us had the discussion.
Thank you. I do want to say that I don't, in the scenario where we don't initiate these membership fees and spectator fees, I don't think we're at risk of closing the rec centers, but we are looking at reduced hours, reduced, that. So I don't, at this point, that $1.8 million based on the feedback from Balancing Act will not, it's not just about the rec centers, it's about the park system in total, right? So we're not going to do that, but we are going to stop mowing 39 or 41 out of the 70, or whatever, 39 of the 71 parks. So
But
So,
I
yeah, we have
just,
to think
to
of it
that
holistically.
point, reduced staffing, reduced hours, those things lead to frustration, and I get really bad service there, and the few hours it's open, I can't get to the equipment I want. So, there is, it might not be a closure, but it is an eroding of, the standards that we would expect.
absolutely. All, not only outdoors, but also indoors. Exactly, yes.
I think we also have to consider the frustration with the staff itself. I mean, they, not being able to mow the lawn or seeing what, that
Or
has,
receiving the complaints, which we do,
Yeah.
we can't
Yeah.
get to, so that it
Yeah.
is, it's tough on staff,
on staff.
but, okay, thank you, Ruth.
I have something to add, just to clarify a little bit on spectator fees. I have a little bit of a concern or question about, because we've all been to SPL, when there's hundreds of volleyball teams out there, camping everywhere. I mean, you can't find a spot. And so I think what we see is an opportunity to, I'm not going to say gouge, but charge somebody $5 to get in the door to watch their kids play, which is fine. I mean, if that's what we intend to do. But then those tournament directors are going to end up charging additional fees for those teams to be in that tournament. And then we're going to have less people coming to Lawrence, because they're going to go to Kansas City, they're going to go to other places that don't do that. And I just want people to be aware that we're in competition. We're not the only game in town.
Yeah.
When these tournaments have an opportunity to save $500 to go someplace else because they're not charging fees and we're charging fees, they're going to go someplace else. And so it's always on, it's competition, whether or not it's Wichita, Omaha, Lawrence, Springfield. And so there's places and stops that they can go. So that's my concern. And I know volleyball typically doesn't charge at the gate. Basketball does. And that offsets officials and a lot of other things that they've got to pay for as well. And so it's not, if we're taking the money because we're going to generate this additional revenue, then they've got to charge additional fees for those teams that come in, and so they may or may not come to Lawrence to do these tournaments anymore. That's just something that I was aware of, and maybe it's not the case anymore. I want to go back to competition a little bit too, because John's been around, some people have been around since the 1 cent sales tax that was approved in 1994. That was to go to Parks and Recreation. Well, where'd that go? It's now in the general fund. We do not get that anymore. We get a portion of it, but not the 1 cent sales tax. So things do change because money was needed someplace else to fill potholes or something else. So the commission decided, well, we'll take the 1 cent sales tax and we'll implement, and now it's all gone. It's just all in the general fund. So that's all changed. When we built SPL and we added on to some of our other facilities, we could have doubled the size of the weight room and everything at SPL. But there was outside, gyms that said, hey, you shouldn't be offering that at all because you're in competition for us and you're giving it away free and we got to charge $40. So if we implement a small fee to help pay for treadmills that break down and other things that just happens. I believe users should have to pay a little bit. I mean, if I go swimming, I got to pay for the pool. If I go golf, I got to pay for golf. There's got to be something. I mean, they would treasure it a little bit more. They use it a lot. I mean, treadmills are expensive, and who pays for those? taxpayers. And so we could raise taxes on everybody, which I don't think everybody wants. So I think we are in a very difficult situation on how are we going to afford this? You know, and if we don't, if we can't pay for some of these amenities that we want and we've always been accustomed to, then the other option is to open up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because we don't have staffing. And so what does that help? I mean, I know there's a big concern. Maybe it is half. Maybe we implement very small fees now and then gradually go up. When we first opened up the golf course, it was $25. It's $61 now. I mean,
61.
yeah, so who pays for the golf? The golfers pay for the golf. I mean, those things have gone up, doubled since we opened the golf course. And we're going to add more to that. I believe that the people that use things should have to pay a little bit for it. Affordable golf was something that we always talked about, John.
Accessible,
and-
affordable.
Exactly. You know, scholarships, you know, for programs. I mean, my question is, if I want to go rent a facility and I can't afford it, do I get a scholarship?
Not for facility rental.
Right, and those are questions. Is golf a program? Can somebody that's low income that wants to play golf ask for a scholarship?
Not at this time.
Not at this time, but those are questions I've had asked. I mean, swimming pool, there's other programs, but seniors that can't afford to play golf, that want to play golf, why can't they get a scholarship? So there's a lot of things that we need to consider. It's a tough situation. I mean, we can advise, you know, and we've heard about the community, but somebody eventually has to pay for it, whether it be raising our taxes or the facilities aren't open as much. I mean, it seems pretty simple to me. I know there may have been promises made 20 years ago, but nothing's really free. I mean, my water bill keeps going up. I mean, I got to pay for a backflow prevention that every year that money goes to the city. What's that for? You know, so, I mean, I know it's a difficult situation. Maybe it should be half to start baby steps. But I just don't believe anything can be free.
Boy, everybody's comments have been so informative. And it's like, whoa, this isn't.
Any other comments? I thank you all very, very much for the very informative comments. Where do we go now? Public?
Open public comment.
Okay, do we have any public comments? Please come up to the podium.
If you would sign in, please, as well. And state your name and your zip code.
There.
Timer out.
We have time to take a break really quickly, or should we, I know I just opened it up, but we're gonna work on finding a break in here somewhere. But please go ahead. Wait. What?
How long of a break are you thinking?
Just, I don't know, what do we need, 5 minutes?
I mean, I'm okay at the moment, but if this goes on for more than 30 minutes, I'll have to get up.
I don't think it doesn't.
Yeah, we'll go, we'll keep going. Thank you very much, please go ahead.
Okay, so hi, I'm Sid. I'm from 66049, and 3 minutes is not going to be enough for everything I have to say, I think. So first of all, I want to say, again, thank you everyone for putting in this work. It's amazing. I want to echo your sentiment that I'm glad that we put in the work. It's not wasted effort. That being said, I'm also pretty opposed to implementing the fees. Everyone here has said great things. I want to echo everyone's sentiments here, especially the point about fees leading to underutilization of centers, leading to potential closures. And this is something that Luis, you brought up that we're not thinking about that right now, but sometime in the future, maybe that's something that could happen. That whoever else is involved in these decisions says, okay, like we're actually not using Holcomb Center that much. Maybe we should just close it because it costs us more than it is bringing in money. Another thing I wanted to point out is that the 2,000 members that we're estimating here that we would have are 2% of the Lawrence population of 100K. But that includes about like 30,000 KU students who already have access to other facilities. And so like if you look at 2% or 2,000 out of 70,000, that's about like 3%, which is a little bit, I mean, it's less conservative is what I wanted to really say. The other point that I wanted to address is actually yours, Lee. I would actually rather raise my taxes to pay for Parks and Rec centers and for Parks and Rec to be able to mow all of the 71 park lawns. I think that these are public services, and while I personally do not golf, I think that I should be chipping in, 15 cents every day so that people who do want to golf can go and golf. Or if someone wants to use the Lawrence Loop for biking around in 85, 90 degree weather, they should be able to do that, Mostly, I guess, for me, this is something that is very much a public service and something that we all need to band together to support and not look at the people who use this should have to pay it. My last general thought, I guess, is that this feels a lot like Sophie's Choice. Sorry, am I on time?
Time is.
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you very much.
I don't have that big beeper this time. Remember how
Yeah, that was effective.
one of the dead.
Yeah.
Have it on the screen.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, it was like, like a doomsday clock.
I forgot to
Oh, we have.
Yeah, I got it.
Got the clock.
I came prepared this time. People want to get up.
I would pass it.
Okay.
If other people want to, we can pass that around if you were going to speak. That way you'll have it already done. Thank you.
Marguerite Ermeling. And I am out in the county, but I do have a Lawrence address and do use that facility at SPL. I've written, and I sent it mostly to commissioners. You may or may not have gotten it. But I have had conversation with at least one person here. And I noticed that in the land ownership division out there, that so much belongs into the KU trough and the rest of it is in the city. And so I looked at parking. And I thought that there was yet another way to consider looking at creating a larger income than even membership, is to look at charging for all the parking that's out there. And the city has probably more spaces. I counted 520 in the KU side, and all the rest of that is city. And I thought, wow, parking fees would be, and especially for venues, if nothing else, is a real positive way to, I think, bring in some money without getting negative publicity about it as a possibility. The other thing is, and you mentioned, Sir Lee, that the 1% tax of yesteryear got diverted into the general fund. It might be possible, speaking to even what you said, to go ask the people if they're interested in some kind of a special use that isn't and cannot be diverted into general funds or any place else that are having needs. But ask specifically for park and recreation and come up with some percentage off a dollar of what it is they would be willing to pay to give you consistent funds. coming in. And that is more palatable than saying adding to property taxes or any other kind of taxes, I think, is that ask them if they can do that. And those things are more substantial potentially in the kind of income that you need to project forward, do for maintenance, for your projects to the future, all of the things that you want to do or want to try to do. It seems like you need to be looking at a much bigger site than just on membership dues and squeezing a little out of here and finding the right number for what's going to be the right fee here or there. And it's never going to really work. And I don't think that we have to look at ourselves for really a lot farther than our own community in terms of competition. I think that's the most important place to look. And you mentioned something about competitive fees to that effect. And I'm not even opposed to membership. But there's just bigger pots that nobody's talking about, and it seems like we should get to those that really fund some of this deficit, and then find out what's necessary in numbers possibly for some membership or contribution or scholarships or anything else that may be supportive to finish off what's necessary in terms of the projections of what Park and Recreation needs. Park and Recreation is, to me, one of the very best things we have in this community. And
Time.
there's hardly not a soul who could possibly miss running into Park and Recreation someplace on their walks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, and thanks for serving. You got a difficult choice to make. So I'm Bob Shum. I live at 1720 St. Andrews Drive. I've got some prepared remarks, and I've got a couple comments afterwards after listening to your conversations. Tonight you have before you a proposal to start charging a fee to use our recreation facilities. During 2012, when the city was planning Rock Chalk Park and Sports Pavilion Lawrence, the City Commission sold to the public a plan whereby the city would build a structure and operate it free of charge to the public. The plan used revenue from a sales tax fund that had been approved years earlier for recreational purposes. The fund had enough financial capacity to be able to bond the new construction and service the recreation center. That money, along with revenue from tournament play, party rentals, naming rights, concessions, was more than sufficient to cover all the costs for that facility. And that has been true for the past 10 years. Now, here comes the city administration, not this in this room, and through their own actions, being short of money, wanting to charge fees to use this facility. It is important to note that this facility, the facility, I'm talking about Rock Chalk Park, I'm talking about Sports Pavilion, is on a healthy financial footing all by itself and therefore should not bear the responsibility of bailing out other city misgivings. This is very personal for me because I served as mayor when the pledge of being free to play was issued. I made the pledge in the name of the city with the agreement of the City Commission. Going back on our word now constitutes a breach of good faith and darkens the city's reputation as being fair and honest. Please do not vote to change our compact with our citizens. All that being said, I would simply say you don't believe we should charge a fee to play. It's working so well now. It's exceeded all the predictions we ever had for attendance. Say to the City Commission, we can't do it. We're not going to do it. And the $500,000 or whatever the number is that you would get in fees, just say we think you should spread that somewhere else. And I could go into the budget missteps that were made, but I'm not going to do that here. And there was many of them, and they were expensive. But you're being charged unfairly with a higher amount of give back or sacrifice than you should be. That's my opinion. And a $500,000 that you're going to try and make up, and that's let me say it again, try to make up. I don't know that you're going to get it or not because you're going to lose some people and all these different things.
Time.
It's going to fall flat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carol Cummer, and I'm the Secretary of Pickleball Lawrence. I think most of the staff here will know me. I agree with Mr. Schrum. I think you guys have been stuck on trying to make up something that I don't think is your fault. I think the city needs to manage their money better. I have a couple suggestions for you. You're talking about the youth, the We Folks program, and the adult, and the programs for the people that can't afford it. Why couldn't you raise some money through maybe hosting some, just like the Optimists, they come in and do the We Scholarship, or they host a pickleball tournament, and they charge people to come in, and the money they receive from that will go to the Park and Rec's We Folks scholarships, the adult scholarships. Why can't we do it for our pickleball group? Would be happy to put one on. How about basketball? How about volleyball? How about golf? Why can't excuse me, why can't the rest of these groups maybe get in there and host a tournament to raise money for these groups so the underprivileged kids can come and play? That was one of my ideas. Another one is maybe the first Friday of every month. We used to do this in the RV park I was at. You could put a donation jar at the first and ask everybody that comes in to maybe bring $1 and put the $1 in and see how much money you can raise. And if it's like wearing the red t-shirts for the Chiefs game, do it $1 for the We Folks. That was another suggestion I had. First Friday. Let's see. Maybe you could get some people to come in and volunteer at the desk instead of having to pay a staff, like maybe the hospital has volunteers, people that know about the programs that are at Park and Rec, and maybe you could reduce their fees to be a member if you're going to charge it. I'm opposed to them. I just don't think we need to do that. I agree that we're already paying it for our property taxes. The other thing, if we do an access fee, then we're paying an access fee. And then what about when a tournament comes in? We don't have access to the facility, so you're hitting us 3 times for paying for the event. And again, I don't think it's your fault. I think the city is managing their money. They're fiscally mismanaging things. So I appreciate all the work you guys have put in. I know it takes a lot to do it. And thank you for your generous donation. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
In the-
I haven't signed the paper, but I will.
Appreciate that.
I'm Barney Hubert. I live in zip code 66044. And I am part of the 80% of the folks who responded to the survey who are opposed to implementing a fee structure. Having said that, I think the thing I really wanted to amplify is what Marilyn said about the charge for children. And I absolutely believe that if a fee structure is deemed absolutely necessary, and I would hope there would be other alternatives, that would not apply to children at all. The other thing that I think really warrants consideration is the qualified rate at 40%, I believe will disqualify people at a rate that probably will negate the value of charging that qualified fee. You know, I think that if people don't have the resources to pay whatever fee structure might be implemented, that they should be exempted from fees altogether. Something that has been referred to that I do want to mention a little bit is the increase in fees for rentals and activities. And I don't know what's being proposed because that hasn't been included in the information provided. But I will say that I believe that I know that rentals were increased by, I believe, about 25% within about the last 3 years. And fees for activities, at least that I'm involved with, have increased to an extent where I think participation has decreased. And I think if those things are occurring, then they need to be very carefully considered. Additional fee increases, I think, will further reduce participation. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comment in the room? We'll go to Zoom. Does anyone on Zoom have a comment they'd like to make? Please raise your hand. I'm seeing none.
Thank you, everyone, for all the comments. Really appreciated. So there is an action requested. Do we go forward with that? Discuss and provide, oh, yeah, just discuss and
Yeah,
provide
provide
feedback.
feedback.
So, there being no other comment, we continue on to the next item.
Okay.
A Lawrence Loop update.
Okay, I'll invite Mark.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're
Do
gonna
you want
take
to
a break.
take a break? Yeah.
We're gonna
Oh,
take a
okay,
break.
sounds good.
Yeah, sorry.
10 minutes?
10 minutes?
So back at 7:20?
How about 5 minutes?
Okay.
Thank you. Stand up, stretch.
running yet? Sure. Okay, we will be here as soon as I turn the video and audio back on.
Okay, thank you, everybody, and thank you for coming back. I know that before we went on break, we talked about moving to the next agenda item, but actually we are continuing with the existing agenda item about the proposed Parks, Rec, and Culture memberships and fees. We would like to continue the discussion with the possible, considering what we can, as a board, as an advisory board, do tonight while we're here as a action that we can make to communicate to the city commission before tomorrow's meeting. And as part of that, Porter, you could share with us what it is that we can do tonight, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
So as part of the new structure for boards and commissions, in resolution number 7472, section 8B, it says, advisory boards can share their ideas or advice with city commission in a few official ways: through board-approved minutes, board-approved work plans, board-approved progress reports, or board-approved formal recommendations. When the board feels strongly about a specific issue or idea, they can write up a clear recommendation, take action on it during a regular meeting with a motion and a vote, and submit it for the commission's consideration.
Thank you. And so, given that we are looking to come up with a statement, a joint statement from us that is a clear recommendation about what we would like as a board the commission to do based on what we've heard tonight.
And we have to get 4 votes for it. It doesn't have to be a complete consensus.
Yes. The trick being here is that we come up with that joint statement. I'm going to throw it out there that my proposal for a statement is that we as a board do not recommend implementation of fees for access to city recreation centers, period.
Yeah, I have a concern with that, because the commission may say, okay, fine, so go make the cuts elsewhere.
Yeah,
in the
I
department.
wouldn't support that
And
statement,
that's-
I don't think.
Okay.
I think we're going to, I think,
Recommendation has to have a solution. Do we have a solution?
Well, I think as Mr. Shum said, we've been given an impossible task, and we're being asked to help balance an entire city budget by charging fees for a facility that's essentially already paying for itself. So,
And I will also add, we do not need to come up with a solution.
yeah.
We are reviewing this budget proposal that includes fees. Okay, so if we're not going to have a blanket statement against fees, does anybody have a way of sort of mitigate, if we don't approve fees, or if we don't say no to fees, what of the fee proposal do we approve?
well,
Not an approval, by the way.
I mean,
I want to make sure
recommend,
that's clear.
sorry,
Yeah, there-
recommend
thank
is,
you.
yes, I.
well, my opposition is to the proposed cut in the budget. I mean, that's where this all starts, right? I mean, if we didn't have, if you didn't have, you need to cut the Parks and Rec budget by X, then, we'd be in a lot better shape. So the idea that we're opposed to fees is really, we're opposed to the budget target.
So, if I may suggest that the statement be, we disagree in principle that in the budget reduction proposed by the Balancing Act, and additionally, do not feel that fees are a way to solve the budget shortfall.
Well, yeah, but then they'd say, okay, we'll find another way.
Well, they're going to, no matter what we do. I mean,
John?
we're just advising.
I like where you're going with this. Do you have a recommended sentence or two that we could all agree on?
I need to think about that, but,
I do, is it okay to comment while you're thinking? I do think it's important to reference fees. This is the third time that the city administration has attempted to force the fee issue, and I guess I feel as though it is, to some extent, I think you said it infinitely better than I will, the public does not support that. And we also don't know pragmatically the extent to which the market can support that. And those are considerations that I don't feel like we should leave out of the letter while trying to redirect it back to the bigger budget discussion.
So you're suggesting we do both?
I am.
I would concur.
And you're right, it's come back. This isn't the first time, but we've also had 3 consultants that say, why aren't you? You know, because it's been their recommendation that we do that. 3 times they said that. And we've elected not to because we're opposed to it. And so we could continue to be opposed to it, but there's got to be a solution, whether or not the funding comes from someplace else. I liked where Bob was going, basically, like, you know, whether it be, what about implementing a 1/4-cent sales tax that goes straight to recreation and then everybody pays for it?
Yep.
But that would take a vote, you know, so
Well, and
that's
the
too late.
consultant is not invested in the outcome of the decision. They are getting paid regardless.
Well, but they also, that's what the staff, that's what they've been paid to do, was give their input on what everybody else is doing in the country. Doesn't make it right
I
necessarily.
think we need to focus
Yeah,
on our
okay.
community.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay.
Because we're not like a lot of other communities.
Then why have a consultant? I mean, are we not gonna,
Now, that wasn't our.
I know.
Let's stay on
Because it's a
focus.
worthwhile exercise, not because it's not that you you put up an equation and you do whatever the ChatGPT tells you to do. You can see Joe
So,
is writing.
Vicki, you had a couple quick statements. The public does not support this proposal. And what was your second one? Do you remember?
It was the point about, we also don't know if the market supports the proposal. I think that's an important gap that was elevated.
John, I see you're writing.
I am, I don't know. I didn't finish, I haven't finished it, but we have reviewed staff's recommendation to meet the city's budget target for Parks and Rec. We believe the budget target would have significant negative effects on access to Parks and Rec facilities and beyond facilities.
And would negatively impact.
System-wide, if you want to put something, park system-wide, including.
I know.
And it does.
I just wanted to clarify. He looked at me and
It
I
includes
just.
maintenance and everything. I mean, it's.
Yeah,
That was good, though.
Can I throw an
facilities.
additional wrench into all of this? Question, in coming up with a joint statement, do we want to include the reasons why we are recommending this?
Well,
Like,
sure.
we are recommending this, like, we all, not all, I guess, some of us listed equity issues. We listed issues about competition with gyms. Do we want to lay out our reasons, or is that too much information
This
to give?
city
I'm posing the question because I haven't figured that out in my mind yet.
has to-
My gut opinion, this is just an opinion, is it is too much information. We have already provided public comment, as have, that's part of this record. And the more succinct our statement is, the more likely we'll get one out tonight and get to vote on it.
John, I liked where you were going there.
Yeah.
I think you
too.
got it. I mean, can you reread that?
We have reviewed staff recommendation to meet the city's budget target for Parks and Rec and Culture. We believe the budget target would have significant negative effect on access to Parks and Rec facilities and challenge the city's unmistakable identity, master plan,
I like unmistakable identity and,
And commitment to equity.
oh, there you go.
And that throws
That
it.
is kind of weaving in
Yep.
a little, yeah.
oh, and challenge the city's commitment to an unmistakable identity. That sounds like a nice speech, doesn't it?
Are you going to add
Are you
and
running?
equity?
We have reviewed staff's recommendations to meet the city's budget target for Parks and Rec. We believe the budget target would have significant negative effect on access to parks and recreation facilities and challenge the city's commitment to our unmistakable identity. Because unmistakable identity is,
It doesn't, that blanket term does include being equitable and inclusive. Do we want to say anything specifically about the fees, or do we just want to leave it at that?
well, I think that they're going to hear a lot from, or have already heard a lot
Yeah.
about on the equity side of things. And I think that that slide which shows that concern for equity and low income, that's the biggest concern, that really stood out for me.
Yeah.
So anyway, if this
That's
is,
why I would add unmistakable identity and commitment to equity.
Yeah,
I would
yep.
third, fourth, that one it is.
I think we're really
So
close.
unmistakable identity is an outcome in the strategic plan. Equity and inclusion is a commitment. So commitment is a good word, so I'm trying to.
so the city's commitment to equity and inclusion?
That's the name of the commitment within our strategic plan.
Awesome.
Okay, let's hear. We have reviewed staff's recommendation to meet the city's budget target for Parks and Recreation and Culture. We believe the budget target would have significant negative effect on access to parks and recreation facilities and challenge the city's commitment to equity and inclusion.
I'm good with that.
Any further discussion on that statement? Do I have a motion?
I would like to move that we accept the drafted statement as is.
I second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
I got 1, 2, 3. Oh, I'm voting yes. So I think they'll all but,
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm going to abstain.
that's cool. Did we,
John, you voted.
Yeah, so just what's the logistics of how we get that to the
No,
council?
but you voted
I-
yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I would think that Lisa, as the chair, can draft what he wrote, send it to Roger, and Roger can get it to Sherry, who is a city clerk, and she can
Well, I need to
send
put
that
on as an
to the commission. Now, I don't know that it needs to be done by noon. What time is the, does the
I
public
think it
comment?
should be.
I
Noon
think-
today, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it was.
thank you
It was
all.
today.
It was today?
Can you-
Okay,
can you
so
do
then
that
we can
by
get
noon?
it to.
I can definitely do it by noon. There's no problem.
No, we can, so, yeah, as long as we get it to Sherry, by that time
No,
we
if
can
it will.
have them add it.
We're the Parks and
Not really.
Recreation Board, not Parks and Rec and Culture, are we?
Correct.
Parks Rec
Recreation
Advisory.
Board.
Advisory Board.
Advisory Board.
PRAB remained.
Awesome. Well done, everybody. Thank you very much.
And I'll check with Sherry in the morning and send out an email to everybody how we handle this, because this is all new territory with the new thing
Yeah.
that we got, so.
Awesome. Having we concluded the business? I think we've concluded the business. Let's move on. Thank you so much for your patience. To the Lawrence Loop update, please. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Mark Hecker, Assistant Director of Parks and Rec. A couple of meetings ago, you asked for an update on the Lawrence Loop projects. So what we're going to do is look at the map up there, and then I'll kind of tell you where we're at on each one of those. Yeah, it's not a great map, and honestly, it needs to be updated. So the little red section up there is the Michigan to Sanders Shaw. So that's the one that's been most talked about with City Commission level. So in that project, it's a $1.4 million total project. We had a grant for $564,000 of that $1.4 million, so the city was responsible for the rest of that. That project is designed and we thought was moving towards construction. The dilemma we've had was easement acquisition. So the people that own the properties we were going through are not willing to sell the properties for an easement. So that project is functionally stopped. So to complete that particular section, we're going to have to reroute, redesign, which will require us to get into the city's bike plan and say, okay, where should this go if not here? So we were following a designated route in the bike plan. So there's multiple conversations that want to take that up along the river, come along the turnpike, and come back down to Michigan. Has some interesting potential, has not been designed, the feasibility is not known. There's an easement that does go along the river that potentially could be used. How we get from the river back to Michigan is the challenge, because there's a railroad we would have to cross. So we thought that one was going to be under construction and maybe built by now, but it didn't happen. The little orange section downtown is the most challenging section we've done. Last couple of years ago, we talked about a RAISE grant. There's going to be a $21 million project that would be river crossings, a spiral, and flying over the railroads. Beautiful. The City Commission decided that was a little too grandiose and wanted to pull that back a little bit. So that project currently is in a North Lawrence corridor study. So they wanted to look at how does that downtown section tie to North Lawrence, what's the transportation back and forth from North Lawrence to downtown. So we kind of pulled back from the $21 million RAISE grant application and said, hey, let's think a little bit differently, and how do these bridges go across the river? Do we want a bridge across the river? Do we want multiple bridges across the river? So it's a difficult section just in designing and how do you get through downtown. Multiple routes have been proposed. I sat with a team that was honestly citizens who came up and said, hey, we'll design this for you. So, great enthusiasm, came up with beautiful things, but it basically came down to, was the City Commission ready to jump in on a $21 million project? So at that point in time, the answer was no. So that's currently funded at $14.6 million. It's sitting unfunded in the CIP and out a few years. So what we need is the North Lawrence corridor study done, define a route, and then come back and design a project. So the project's not dead, it's just unfunded. So what the theme of all these are, all of these show up on the CIP, but all of them show up as an unfunded project. So that's the concerning point for a lot of the flat groups and the groups that have really been pushing to complete this loop is, okay, we had those funded at one point, and now the funding's fallen to unfunded. So that's the hard part about this. The bigger one, the big kind of fuchsia color out there is, so that's Queens to Castle. It is not designed. It's very imaginary at this point. Some of it's out in the county. So for us to get that section built, the route that's shown there on that map is actually probably not the most current route. The route would actually go up next to the turnpike and come up where that little green section's sticking up on Castle. That route shown there goes down through Martin Park. That project is a $3.5 million project that, again, is sitting unfunded. Not designed, not routed. We don't have property. We don't have anything that would allow us to actually build that. So the function of the map is just saying, hey, there's an open section here that needs to be completed. There's a property owner out there that's interested in possibly teaming with the city to build it, but that's relying on him developing properties and acquiring properties and including the trail as part of his development. Don't know if that'll happen or not. So those are the 3 sections that are left. The little tiny section there, 7th to 8th, was completed last year. So it goes up to the Santa Fe station. So currently, you can start at the Santa Fe station, go around town, you can get all the way out to Queens Road on the loop without missing a piece. So it's pretty, 17 and a half miles are complete of the 22. So I've been working on this for a couple of years, perhaps 20-ish. So I'd like to see it completed in the next year or two. I don't know if we're going to get to it or not, so.
So, and just to add to that, this was, the capital improvement program was presented to the commission a few weeks ago. That comes before the proposed budget, which was last week, but they have discussed it on both occasions because what budget has provided them is a proposal that prioritizes street maintenance over closing these because of the lap of, really it's about funding. While we may have some money for the design and all that, it's not all committed. So committed money for design that we don't necessarily have construction dollars for or land acquisition dollars for, they feel they could be better used in streets. But the commission has asked, you know, what other options do we have if we want to consider this? So while the current proposed budget doesn't have it in there, that could change depending on, you know, questions forthcoming from the commission or ideas prior to the September 12th approval of the budget. It's not totally dead. But again, a sacrifice would be made to fund less streets and try to pursue this.
Any questions?
How much is the total remaining cost?
Let's see, if we added all those up. So the hard part is that 7th to Constant, so that's downtown section, is not designed. So that'll be expensive because we know we have to clear a railroad. And then a lot of the concepts took us across the river, used the levee trail, and then came back. So, you know, the 1.4 million is the one section that we thought we were building, but we aren't. The other one's 14 million for 7th to Constant. And then the other's 3.5 million. So you're in the under $20 million we could have this done.
I'm sorry, I missed your discussion about the alternate proposal that the Bowerstock people recommended.
The alternate proposal, one of the proposals for Michigan to Sanders Shaw is Sarah Hill Nelson's working on a plan to get up to.
She came before this committee.
Yeah. So her thought is, hey, let's maybe reroute the trail that was Michigan to Sanders Shaw, take that up the river. We could access the Cameron's Bluff new area they're talking about, and then get back to Michigan up near the turnpike. So that's her idea. Hasn't been designed. We don't know the cost. We don't know feasibility. We'd have to work with the railroad. We'd have to get an easement through the private property that goes along the river. So.
But is it in play?
I think everything's in play. It's a matter of redesign. It hasn't been designed as far as engineering wise.
But do you guys look at it as a possibility?
It has possibility. Yeah, we'll be working with them as they work to access the Cameron's Bluff. Okay. So could this be a win-win? Potentially. You know, we get outside the county once we leave Bircham Park, so outside the city. So we're in the county.
Oh, right.
And we're on private property with an easement. So it has potential.
I think the disturbing, this is Marilyn Hull, I think the disturbing thing for people who want to see the loop completed is that it appeared to zero out completely 5 years worth of investment, which gives a hint that maybe we're just sort of dropping this. I know that's not true, but I think for the public, that's a concern. So I'm wondering, I don't know how the CIP works, but is it possible to have placeholder amounts in there? I mean, I know you sort of do that anyway. Mm-hmm. And I would add that I think we should go with the most affordable routing. Mm-hmm. We have creative members of the community that have really cool ideas that are really expensive. And what we saw with the RAISE grant is that that entire process basically delayed any progress and came to naught. My opinion is at least my opinion is we should focus on what staff, engineers, whoever think are the most affordable routes, and that's the only thing that we propose to the commission.
So there are definitely options that are less expensive. So that downtown loop, if we tried to route it through city streets and around past City Hall and under some bridges, and eventually we have to get over the railroad or across the railroad. So that's the most difficult piece of that one. The one clear out northwest, it's just a simple property acquisition thing. There's a creek, we're following Baldwin Creek. So however many times we cross that, the expense keeps going up and up and up. We do own a considerable amount of land out there, but we don't own the route from Queens up to basically the Turnpike. We own from the Turnpike all the way up to Castle, so we can get that through. So that has several $1 million would need to take place to one, acquire property, and then two, build that one. The Michigan to Sanders Shaw was disappointing that that route we had designed didn't work. So
Were people refusing, period, or refusing at the price you were offering?
I can't comment on that.
Okay. Because that's
Yeah.
an interesting point. I think one thing we could do tonight as a board is remind the city commission that in the 2023 ETC study that was done in the master planning process, trails and trail expansion was the #1 priority of citizens. #1. So remind them of that. Also remind them that our master plan includes completion of the loop in 5 years. While we know that that a master plan is not a budget, it feels like it totally negates what's in there in the master plan if we just zero everything out. So I don't know. So what, I'm sorry, I'm wandering. But I think reminding them trails are the #1 park and rec public priority. 2, the master plan calls for completion of the loop within a 5-year period.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing on the CIP switches every year. So in theory, it's a 5-year plan. So in best case scenario, we would set that plan and we just knock them off one at a time. But what happens is certain projects are deemed to be more important than the ones that are on the list, and or the cost of the projects on the list escalate year by year by year, which means the total funding package isn't available, so something has to fall off the list. So in this instance, the city commission talked about streets or trails. That was their choice. And they chose the streets to maintain a level of consistency on streets. So was that a viable choice? You know, it depends on if you're very, very adamant about trails, and everything Marilyn's saying is correct. It does always rank #1 on every time we go out and ask people what's their most important asset, that's trails. So, and in the past, all missing sections of the Lawrence Loop were in the CIP. So we've kind of evolved off of that a little bit. Now, they're still written there, they're just unfunded.
So there are placeholders already? Who have
Yes,
placeholders?
there are
There already
placeholders.
Yeah, I mean,
placeholders, but-
placeholders, if something's unfunded, it's not a placeholder.
Right, we can't put it in the funded as a placeholder, but they still are on the list. They still,
I don't think
are
that's
up
going to
for
be
decision.
satisfying to the people who are seeing this departure from investment that's taken place over the last 20 years.
And that'll be the commission to decide.
Of course. of course.
Did you have an idea of how you wanted to remind?
Well, first of all, I mean, does anybody else have opinions on this? If I'm the only one that's really interested, then maybe it's not a viable thing to write a recommendation about.
I guess I would say that I am interested and I am concerned, but the fact that it's still in the CIP, albeit unfunded, is disappointing, but not, I don't know. I don't know that I'm prepared to, at least right now, given the discussion we just had over the last item, to overextend right now on this point. That's just, and that's my personal, like, I care a lot, but and I, you know, it is super frustrating that the loop is not done, yet people ride the loop alternatively every day. So it's, to me, it just doesn't rise to the level of needing a statement. While at the same time, we as individuals can continue to make comments here and share our concerns with the commission.
I will add that in last week's commission meeting agenda, public comments in excess of, I don't know what number, about the loop were included. So I think that's what brought it into the conversation last week at the proposed budget meeting.
Yeah, and I would also say the addendum to the packet, the comments related to the historical significance of parts of the loop and bringing that, particularly the Underground Railroad, these individuals who were key to, you know, part of that core of making Lawrence a free state, all of that history that is part of our unmistakable identity. Those are great ideas, and we need to keep those and keep pursuing that as well.
We're talking about the city's comprehensive plan, or are we talking about Parks and Rec comprehensive plan?
In the Parks and Rec master plan, when all the projects are listed, it has completion of, I don't know, these two segments in 1 to 3 years, and it's a priority 1. And then it's completion of this other segment in years 4 and 5, and it's priority 1.
Okay, so it's Parks and Rec
Yes.
plan. So then Parks and Rec has to determine where it fits in the budget.
Right, so we propose it, and that's, and I would say that where it was in the CIP plan at the time of the comprehensive plan was also what was saying priority, finish this, right? Because we had it identified as design, so I think we were closer to the finish line at the time of the comprehensive plan. You know, what are we looking at? What are the possibilities here? What can we prioritize? What are we on our way to doing? What are the short successes you can do based on where we are? And now that's kind of changing. But, so I don't know if that answers both of your questions. It's in there, and it was prioritized because of where we were, and this does shift it a little bit. And we all know, and we stated that, you know, comprehensive plans are moving, living documents, and you have to make adjustments based on realities. So that is a shift from, you know, March when this was completed, and we weren't yet talking about the CIP 5-year program and replacing it. But it is the PRC strategic plan, so, master plan. So.
So I conclude from the silence in the room that there's not general consensus on this, and so I'm willing to just drop it and if I want to make my own personal remarks, I'll do that.
I mean, thank you, that's kind of you to give us an out, but I wonder how much of it is understanding the CIP big picture and the funds that go into it, how it's separate than the budget. I think that would help me a little bit, and that's maybe my own ignorance, but I wonder if that could be a topic on the agenda. I don't know if that timing is not sufficient, but that, I guess I could use the big picture because the immediacy to the budget challenges feels very forefront.
Yeah.
We can
Can I-
discuss that later in the agenda, too,
Okay. Oh, yeah.
part of the roundtable.
And I would say that I don't know that anybody in our staff is prepared to give that type of presentation. We'd have to bring probably the budget office and finance in. And they have answered some of those questions in previous, in recent commission meetings, either in their presentation or in responses to the commissioners. But we'd have to totally rely on them to, give you all answer the questions you might have. I mean, the fact that it's separate and, how some of these are funded, but they would have the details that you would probably want.
Yep.
So,
Thank you. Thank you, Mark, for that. There being no other discussion, we will continue with the roundtable.
No, the director's report.
Director's report.
okay, I have nothing to add. I've not worked on anything since this time last month.
So there being no director's report, board items, do we want to request a presentation of the, or any other items that we want to bring up? Sorry.
What would be the next step with the letter that we received today about the kiosks? Are they looking to have that on our agenda, or is that?
What you saw is what we saw.
Okay.
There's just, and it was addressed to the advisory board.
Right.
So there is really nothing that we're doing other than public comment on that. Now, that doesn't mean that the board can't say, I'd like to discuss this. I don't know. We're certainly not prepared to. This is out of nowhere for us, so. But again, if it's something that the board as a whole wants to put on a future agenda, we can invite, them to come up with some ideas and including funding.
Yeah, maybe that's
So
something to
it's,
do.
I think that would be inappropriate if the board so chooses, because again, we can come up with future agenda items and then the board votes to move those forward to a future, and then we'll do our best to accommodate that.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, what they were saying was they're writing to support the loop funding and to ask for consideration of adding historical signage
As
to the Peterson Road League.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, with that portion being unfunded.
Right.
That's not gonna happen, but I guess I do feel like it would be useful for this advisory board where CIP funding or where the CIP is concerned, we might need a CIP 101 course. So that would be my recommendation. And then particularly as it pertains to the Lawrence Loop, but also in general. And I would say, in my past experience working with bicycle advisory to the MPO, that there was always an effort to try and, where roads were being improved, find opportunities to add to the loop, add bicycle infrastructure. So what is the current state of affairs with that kind of thought process?
Well, the bike plan is still underway, correct, John? You're a member of the master bike plan?
Yes.
That's what it's called?
Still in
where,
process. Master plan, yeah.
And I do know that in the conversations of some of those CIP projects that are already funded, they're talking about bike lanes and all that. It doesn't connect to the loop. I don't know that any of the remaining sections
it's-
align with those road projects.
Okay.
But the bike plan will inform some
Yeah.
of that as well.
And that in that group, there's some very strong advocates for the loop.
There you go, yeah.
So I think,
Yeah. So these are just running parallel to each other, but I know certain parts of the conversation are being had just with the regular CIP as it is right now. Others will be addressed as that, and then we'll continue to pursue loop, alternatives as,
Yeah.
start to shape up.
Okay. Did we need to make a recommendation or just throw that out there?
I guess that would be under future agenda items, or?
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking, that we recommend a future agenda item be related to CIP
101 type.
101 and the loop.
Okay, I will,
And do we need to vote on that?
I think so.
Yeah, I
And
think
then
so,
I
too.
will, I cannot guarantee the time, but I
Yeah, of
will
course.
tomorrow. I'll, if you guys do this, I will reach out to budget and finance and see what we can pull together for you.
Is it likely that at our next meeting, we're going to be reviewing whatever decisions have been made about rec center fees?
I think
was
so. I
wondering
think
that,
that's
too.
reasonable.
Yeah.
And we will meet, as we normally do, the Monday before our meeting, and maybe it'll be sooner, because we'll have some direction to come up with the next agenda. So I think it's reasonable at this specific time that we keep you updated on that.
Appreciate that, yeah.
Yeah.
So the commission is taking that up tomorrow? and
Well,
is
there-
it-
yes,
as-
this presentation that we just did for you on the fees and the
Right.
budget will be brought up to the commission tomorrow for their feedback, those questions. And
For their feedback, they're not voting
Not
it
the
up or down?
outcome.
Okay,
The outcome
okay.
won't really happen until the budget is
Budget,
final,
okay.
right, which it will be
Right.
in, but in August, we can provide an update as to, what the direction was
Awesome.
and anything we've come up since then. So, update.
Any other roundtable things people brought up, or?
I'm ready to go home.
The follow-up item, you want to touch on that? The report there.
Oh, also, yes, so I'm sorry, not that we are going to review it now, but last month, we provided you with a PDF with youth participation in our recreation programs. There was one mislabeling of one of the programs that Lee picked up on, so we provided an update with that, as well as provided the numbers for adult participation as well. So it's been,
nice.
you have, both are in there now. So if you go to the agenda item and that link, it'll give you that information.
Thank you for clarifying that. I wasn't quite sure what I was in there.
That was good.
All right. There being no further discussion items, can we move to, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Good meeting.
Yeah.
Good.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you, everyone.